Good day to all, ladies and gentlemen, and all the ships at sea. It is time to discuss a thing called the Malcolm X assassination. Now, in the 60s, we had a series of assassinations, starting in 63, of course, with...
Was that 1863?
Well, 1863 was not the assassination of JFK, nor was it the assassination of Lincoln. Lincoln was assassinated in 1865. In 1963, JFK is assassinated. That's followed by the assassinations of, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy. And here we are now in past the turn of the century of the 20s into almost 2024, and people still don't know who assassinated these people for sure. There is constant questions about assassinations that have occurred during that time, and Malcolm X is one of them. Just recently, you saw that in the newspaper, a man who spent probably 25 years in prison for the alleged assassin of Malcolm X had been exonerated, as well as his co-defendant exonerated, and now is filing a lawsuit against the FBI saying that they had evidence against them. Now, the Malcolm X assassination is interesting because it happened in February of 1965, and what ended up happening was Malcolm X was an individual who started out in the Nation of Islam, and he was a big proponent of that, and then he became disillusioned by them. Specifically because he felt that they had been drifting away from certain things that he felt near and dear. The leader of the Nation of Islam, he found, was having affairs with secretaries in the Nation of Islam.
Elijah Muhammad.
And that's correct. And that he was completely disillusioned, broke off, and started his own, converted to Sunni Islam, and then started his own programs. He had been threatened death on numerous occasions, and the FBI knew about this. And the FBI had wiretaps on him and wiretaps on his home, and actually heard phone calls where they said when Betty Shabazz his wife was getting phone calls saying, your husband's not going to live through the year, this is not going to happen, and everything else.
Wiretaps back then, how would they do that? I mean, would they go up on the telephone pole? How did they tap back then? Was that a little bit easier than it is now?
It was somewhat easier because everything was on a system that went to a regulator, so you could actually tap through that. They also put listening devices in hotel rooms and things along those lines. I mean, there's a constant amount of tape recordings of Martin Luther King in a hotel room with a young lady and all this other kind of stuff. And this was all collected by J. Edgar Hoover, who had a vast file on people that he considered to be troublemakers, one of which was Martin Luther King. The other one was Malcolm X. Now,
they didn't have to call up the operator and say, get me Murray Hill 7352 or whatever.
No, you had to do like in Green Acres, you had to climb up the pole. And then hold up that.
Well, I mean, by 65, were we doing straight rotary phone dialing?
Straight rotary phone dialing was going on in 65.
Well, even back in the early 70s, my family had what was called a party line, where you would share the phone with somebody in the area. Al, you're laughing, but that was actually a thing. It was.
No, I'm only laughing because I love hearing your stories about your family life, because it really is.
It was fun. It was fun as a kid.
It really is the most unique circumstances I have ever heard in my life. I mean, it's like a Charles Dickens novel.
I think that's what makes us a really good team, actually, because I'm a bit of a wild card.
No argument on that. I mean, no argument whatsoever on that.
As a kid, if you picked up the phone real quietly, you could actually listen to your neighbor's conversation, And then you'd have the hell scared out of you when the neighbor would say, "I can hear you." And it'd be like a couple of old ladies. And you're a kid, so you don't know. Like I mean, they can't really find you. But it was fun. But I digress. So you would climb to the top of the pole, and Sarah would get you the party back then, right?
That's right, Mabel. One ringy dingy. So now Malcolm X was obviously a very controversial individual. He had a
real name. Was that his real name? Like it was
no, that's not his real. He took that name. He took that.
But I mean, like, is Malcolm his real name?
No, it's not.
Okay, it's not.
But his program was starting to pick up very well, especially in Harlem, New York, and he lived there, and he was planning this meeting. Okay, and on February 29th,
leap year,
27th. I'm sorry, February 27th. He was in Manhattan at the Audubon Ballroom, and he's giving a speech, and there's a disturbance in the crowd. There's a large crowd in there. He's got bodyguards and things around like that. And there's a disturbance. Somebody uses the N-word and says, "Stop, get your hand out of my pocket." And then everyone kind of turns around. And at that point, gunshots ring out. A shotgun is fired directly into Malcolm X. And at least two other men start firing. Malcolm X is hit 21 times.
Wow.
Okay, 21 times.
Well, if it's a shotgun, is it just the little pellets, or is it?
Yeah, it was like a sawed-off shotgun that was fired directly into his chest. It did not. Not all of it went in. I mean, there are horrible pictures that they have from the scene where you just see the splatter that was going on, and also the gun bullet holes and things along those lines in this ballroom. He's rushed out. He dies within 15 minutes at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital. They arrest 3 individuals. They arrest the man who had the shotgun. Okay. Now he is.
Oh,
I'm sorry. That's right. They get him. They get him shortly after he's arrested. Then they arrest 2 other individuals that they say were identified by bodyguards and otherwise as shooting. The guy with the shotgun belonged to the Nation of Islam out of Newark, New Jersey. Now, he says these other 2 guys had nothing to do with this. They were not involved. He signed affidavits to that effect and everything else, notwithstanding the fact that they ended up being convicted of the murder and went to prison. And he kept writing, saying, "Listen, I don't know why these guys are in jail. They were not involved in this at all." So they keep looking at this. Finally, Cyrus Vance Jr. Comes into office. He takes a look at all the stuff and says, "You know what? We're exonerating these men." And so the 2 men that should not have been convicted were exonerated, and they already had been out of jail on parole at that point in time. So
Malcolm X, like I've seen clips. He gave lots of speeches. How did he make money?
Well, he was a very snazzy dresser.
Well, he was a snappy.
He's not bodyguards. So what did he do for a living? I know he gave a lot of speeches.
Well, that's just it. He comes from a long line of ministers. I mean, his father was a minister and things along those lines. So
would he have been just based on ministry like any other church?
And that's exactly right. So it's donations, it's sponsorships, things along those lines. At that time in Harlem, it wasn't gentrified, so buildings were cheap and rent was low, and so you were able to get around on that. He was also sponsored by a number of different organizations, and probably received like teens or the equivalent of a teen as donations from his followers. He was a Sunni Muslim, So I'm sure that the Muslim community, embraced him and took care of him. When you see, even the Hasidim communities in Brooklyn and places like that, the synagogue and the community takes care of these people. There's always money, and they may not be working, but there's always food on the table, and they always have money in their pocket. So the Islamic community worked with him on this and gave him a nice living. I mean, it wasn't like he wasn't one of the evangelists you see that has this huge, mansion and this, that, the other thing. I mean, he was living on a budget, but, he was able to survive that way. He's a very interesting man. But, what ends up happening is that the FBI, during the investigation and everything else, withheld evidence that they had an undercover guy as part of his entourage.
So do we think it's a government is involved? There's some level of conspiracy. They let it happen, or they sort of made it happen, or they
they certainly allowed it to happen. Okay, in the sense that they had already known that, I believe in June, of the year before, they had already heard death threats to his wife, and he was convinced that he was going to be executed either by the Nation of Islam or by the FBI. So it was his thought that he was going to go down hard by either one or both. And there may have been some sort of a working agreement with the Nation of Islam, with Nation of Islam and the FBI. As I said, there was an individual who years later, said, listen, I was working for the FBI. I was involved in this, that, the other thing. He wrote a letter to Betty Shabazz, basically explaining that, that there was a government part in this assassination. So, here we are now, almost 60 years from his assassination, and we still don't know who was involved. I mean, we know that the man with the shotgun did not put 21 bullets into Malcolm X. So we also know
there was more than a shotgun blast to make this all.
Oh yeah, there were 21. There was a shotgun blast, and there were 21 bullets.
Oh, okay. I thought there were 21 wounds.
No, the pellets type of thing. No, that was a sharp blast in the middle. But I mean, if you take a look at the scene, I mean, there's bullets everywhere. I mean, everyone hit him.
They weren't filming this speech. I mean, most of the speeches are filmed. I've seen these clips.
Like I said, what ended up happening was this. There was not they did not have it on film. There's a ton of pictures, but there was no filming of it, to my knowledge. And you have a scenario where the man goes down, and then they arrest 3 people, and 2 of the people didn't do it, but served almost 25 years.
That's it. There, we everyone's got a camera now. So at all these high-profile events, there is surveillance. There are surveillance cameras that are just there. Plus, every human is now able to record whatever they want, and I think that's good. I think it helps get to the truth a lot easier.
Well, now, just so you know, like shortly before he ends up getting assassinated, they blew up like his car. I mean, so like there was somebody gunning for him at this at this ballroom. They had security.
Nobody does that anymore. Do they blow up cars anymore? They used to be so common. That was the way.
Oh yeah, the IRA still.
I don't see it anymore. Like you start the engine and boom, right?
Yeah,
that was like a very common way, Jonesy. I haven't seen that recently.
In the movie Casino, when that happens to De Niro, spoiler alert, it is one of the most it's a great film, but it's one of the most bogus scenes because of the it's so fake. If you watch it, you'll see like it's not real fire or anything like that. It's just like a flash. But I digress. I digress once again. But yeah, they don't blow people up anymore. I was just on Thanksgiving, whenever it was, I was driving by a diner called the Huck Finn outside of Union. And this is kind of related. In that diner, they found a body in the back of like a stretch, like a Lincoln many years ago in a mafia hit. They didn't quite blow them up, but, people don't leave bodies in trunks at diners anymore either, right? What's become of the world?
I know. And I think the problem is, like, how do you get that bomb into the car? It's more difficult.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, the IRA assassinated Lord Mountbatten by blowing up his boat.
Oh, wow.
Even more of a interesting stretch.
Did they put a bomb on the boat, or did they
put a bomb on the boat? Yeah, there was a bomb on the boat.
I saw that in Miami Vice numerous times.
I mean, it's very common in the 70s in all the shows that, you'd have to...
Yeah, true.
And would just blow up.
Oh, Godfather, right?
Oh, Godfather, yeah. That was the ultimate scene.
But then what I wanted to mention to you about with the hit.
Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Friday.
That's right.
That was Apollonia. Now,
Apollonia, that's right.
Right, who replaced Vanity in the group. Do you remember, Joe?
Really?
When Apollonia... No. Vanity 6. You remember Vanity 6?
Yes.
Became Apollonia 6.
Ah.
When
I
Vanity left.
Uh-huh.
Then Apollonia... The different Apollonia...
Yeah.
And the Godfather.
Right, Apollonia was a character.
Oh, okay. All right. I was going.
How did Apollonia 6 do?
Not as good as Vanity 6.
This Vanity 6 was played in every strip bar in the United States.
Yeah, but she had a rough go for a while. She was in rehab, and then she turned things around. I think she passed away recently. Should we take it?
So now going back to our assassination plot. Okay, 21 bullets, 10 buckshot hits on him. So 31, foreign particles are in his body. He lived for 15 minutes and then died. And they know that there were at least 3 gunmen. The man with the sawed-off shotgun, as I said, he confessed and he pled guilty. And then he tried to exonerate the other 2 who had...
Why doesn't he implicate who's guilty then? If he knows these guys aren't guilty, then why does he...
Because the investigation, they had them identified by people that were in the audience. One of which was the FBI guy that they never identified as an FBI guy. And he's, these are the guys that rushed the stage and shot him.
Well, wouldn't you think assassins in cases like this are proud of their work? I mean, they think that they're doing the greater good, as far as him confessing is concerned.
Well, that's a very valid point because they were all members of the Nation of Islam in Newark. So they certainly were not friends of Malcolm X.
Right.
And the other guy did take responsibility for his actions. So,
but he didn't implicate anyone else.
He didn't. He refused to implicate anyone else. He just said, "But I can tell you this: those 2 didn't do it. They were not involved."
I wouldn't believe him unless he implicated who was actually responsible.
Well, I mean, there was, but I mean, it seemed like these guys, and just so you know, also,
they have guns.
It wasn't like these guys were tricked into a confession or anything like that. They steadfastly said we were not involved. We were not. We didn't do it. Okay, we didn't do it. And they never admitted to anything. And yet, here's the guy who stands up and says, listen, I did it. These 2 did it.
Again, it's the problem with eyewitness testimony, right?
Right?
What color shirt am I wearing?
Black.
All right. You got it right. Eyewitness testimony. Remember they used to do that on Wonderama?
Yes.
Wonderama was wonderful.
Yes.
I grew up in the Bob McAllister era. Some of my friends grew up with the guy before him.
Oh, there was someone before him. I didn't know.
Yeah. Sonny Fox, right? Was it Sonny Fox?
Yes.
Yeah. Sonny Fox.
There was a couple the exercise.
Oh,
your exercise.
Anybody here have an aardvark?
Oh, that was a nice song. Anybody here have an aardvark?
Well, kids and people too.
Yeah.
Kids are people too.
And
What the heck is it? Do you remember that?
Yeah, what the heck is it?
They would show you a device and they would say, "What the heck is it?"
That is a,
And you'd have to guess.
was that a vape?
That always reminds me of
No, it's a pipe.
It always reminds me of the Indians in or the Native Americans. I'm sorry, in
Just trying to get us canceled. Although
native-
actually, no. But going back,
what
Alex roommate was a member of a tribe. He became a judge in the for his tribe, and he preferred Indian. He called himself Indian, which is interesting. I think there's a split in that community.
I think it was a generational thing with a lot of those words we're not allowed to use anymore. It depends on what generation you're of.
Yeah.
Well, what were the name of the Indians in F Troop?
What the heck? Where they were the Hekawi.
Oh, Hekawi. That's right. And they came from the fact that they were lost in the woods, and they said, "Where the heck are we?" And that's how they became the Hekawi Indians. That was whatchamacallit. Crazy Cat was one of the, and then whatchamacallit, the chief.
I saw Ken Berry once.
Really?
Yeah.
Person, yes, he was playing at the Paper Mill Playhouse
In Millburn.
and I lived in West Orange, and I was at the St. Cloud Pharmacy, and I was walking out of the pharmacy, he was walking in, and
Nice.
from F Troop and from Mayberry RFD.
Yeah.
You know, and Mama,
Playhouse.
and whatchamacallit, Mama's.
Yes,
Yeah. The Paper Mill Playhouse, Vinny, since you left Jersey, has become quite the gateway to Broadway.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
They test shows there that are going to Broadway now. Back when I was a kid, it was like, wasn't that serious of a thing.
No, it wasn't.
At the going back to our story here. Now,
Tell us a story, Al.
so now we have one of one of the two men that was exonerated has now filed a lawsuit against the FBI, saying that the FBI has hid evidence that would have exonerated him all those years ago.
Join me.
So it's going to be interesting to see.
There's a lot to that club.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see where this goes, and we will, keep you posted.
Absolutely.
Because this is something that maybe even Court TV might want to start taking a look at. Because this situation, the fact that we have nobody believes that there was a single gunman in the case of JFK. No one believes that there was a single gunman in Martin Luther King. No one believes that there was, they believe that there were three, but they don't have the right three from Malcolm X. And nobody believes that Sirhan was the one who killed Bobby Kennedy.
And we got Scott Peterson is innocent. So
and they've got that right now. This is bizarre to me that in 60 years we've not been able to solve conclusively any of these murders.
Well,
We're going to explore.
we could do it in our next podcast.
I was going to say we're going to explore. We're going to look into Bobby Kennedy. We're going to also look into Martin Luther King. It's a very, very interesting subject, and we have to try to find some peace as a nation with regards to what happened here. And was the FBI involved? Was the FBI not involved? Was the CIA involved? Was the CIA not involved? Yeah. So stay tuned, America. We're going to solve everything, every mystery ever, even Stonehenge. We're going to solve it, even though it has nothing to do with crime. We're still solving it. Okay? We'll see you soon.